Item 6 is members' questions. Could I ask that members who wish to ask a supplementary question stand up and state supplementary, and also that any supplementary questions are put forward clearly and briefly. Question number 1, Councillor Osborne.
Question number 1 to the leader, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank Councillor Osborne for his question. And as usual, it's a kind of relatively usual question and the relatively usual answer. That on this side we are engaged in clearing up the mess that his party created, one that they failed to apologise for. And unfortunately, we, like every local authority, is having to make tough decisions. On our side, we have made sure that the front line is protected as far as possible. The school budgets are broadly protected, and in fact, we have sought lower than normal savings from the adult social services. On the issue of 1 o'clock club, which is part of his question B, what is important to note is that we are not closing 1 o'clock clubs, despite what he may want to believe or want to put out there. What is important is that we engage in creating 1,800 nursery places for the most vulnerable and most disadvantaged people in our community. And perhaps he would say whether he's for it or against it. And if he's for it, where would he find the places and how soon could he find them? Because the challenge this council faces is to find those 1,800 places in record time before, we have a very short period of time to do it, and these are targeted to the people who desperately need it.
Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Osborne.
Will the council leader please answer the main thrust of my question, which is about community cohesion, not about the frontline services, not about statutory duties, but about the community cohesion damaged by this process?
Well, I think I go back to my earlier point, which is that you have created a situation in which the community cohesion is under tension. But I would disagree with you that we have smashed through that. I don't think the community is incohesive. I don't think that we have sought to particularly damage any particular section of the community. We have sought to make sure that where budget reductions are, the most vulnerable are protected.
Councillor MacDonald.
Mr. Mayor, will the leader undertake to continue following the policy of his predecessor over 3 years, which he's now adopted and continues to maintain, of ensuring that this borough brings good value to all members of it, despite the difficulties it's working under the last government?
I thank Councillor MacDonald for... I
think the leader's been asked a question. We'll hear his answer.
Well, Councillor MacDonald makes an absolutely right point, that the services we provide are for all people of the borough. We must make sure that those who need the most get the most, those who need the least actually have the least financial burden of providing the services for the most. Ultimately, our duty is to make sure that the services are provided at a price people can afford, as well as at a level that people need.
Councillor Osborne.
Question number 2 to the leader, please.
Thank Councillor Osborne for his question. I've got 2 things I'd say in addition to the written question, is that Councillor Osborne shouldn't spend too much time reading the social media, because I've seen that every time there is a complaint about either lack of orange sacks or the levels of recycling, there are several reposts to the contrary. In fact, last Saturday I was in Earlsfield, where I knocked on several doors where a number of people congratulated the council on the refuse collection service. The orange sack delivery has been problematic, but it is now sorted. By and large, people are able to order them online and are able to get them relatively quickly. There are some glitches, but they are not the ones that explain the level of reductions in recycling. The written answer shows you exactly what has led to the fall. And could it also be that the first thing in recycling that one should do is we should avoid generating the waste in the first place? Perhaps our message to people that you should avoid generating the waste in the first place is getting through. Perhaps more people are composting, which is not showing up in our figures because people are doing the right thing. So,
Councillor Osborne.
Well, I thank the leader for the concession that there has been glitches. Can I ask, last time we had any figures for the period 2010 to 2011, this borough was 7th from bottom out of 32 boroughs on its recycling rates. What are the latest figures?
I don't actually have those figures, but what I will say, of course, is that there is a huge appetite in the borough for recycling, and we're doing everything possible. In fact, we are, as towards the end of the printed answer, it says some of the initiatives that we are taking to ensure that there is more recycling opportunities available. More materials are being recycled in different ways. And it is important that we encourage recycling and help people to do what it is. I've just been told that, in fact, our figure is 46%.
Second supplementary, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Does the leader share my concern that Councillor Osborne's memory is failing him? He seems to have forgotten that the opposition voted against the awarding of the refuse contract on 2 grounds. First of all, that the council's consultation wasn't thorough enough, and secondly, that residents didn't want or need so many recycling sacks. Has Councillor Osborne just performed a tyre-squealing U-turn, or should he ask for an urgent referral to his local memory clinic?
Oh, well, I'll leave Councillor Osborne to find out his nearest memory clinic, and I'm sure he'll get a good advice from them. Perhaps he was interested in endless consultations so that endless number of leaflets could be shoved through people's letterboxes, driving up recycling rates.
Before we move to the next question, can I just remind you, I did ask, please, for brief supplemental questions. We actually had 3 questions there, Councillor Clay. Councillor Humphreys.
Question number 3 to the leader.
I thank Councillor Humphreys for his question. This is I don't know how many people in this chamber know where Lee Valley starts and ends and where the park begins and ends. How many of you have been there? I doubt very few, because only about 12 people from this borough have been to Lee Valley Park. This is a park which has been foisted on the whole of London at an enormous cost to every Londoner, apart from the few who enjoy the direct benefits. What also is true is the park has enjoyed enormous investment as a result of the Olympics. And it is about time the Lee Valley Authority prepares a self-sustaining business plan and generates its own income, reducing its call on the rest of the London.
Please.
Councillor Osborne.
Can I ask the leader to answer the first part of Councillor Humphrey's question, which reads, is the leader pleased that Wandsworth is able to continue to deliver the lowest average council tax in the country?
The answer to your request is yes, and the answer to your question is yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you originally. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Supplementary on Mr. the leader. I'm glad to see myself as well that Wandsworth again is taking the lead in something here, against something that's manifestly unfair to us and our local residents. I wonder if the leader would be kind enough to put the context of our current setting of the council tax in the context of some other of our neighbouring London boroughs and maybe a London average too.
Well, I mean, our neighbouring boroughs charge twice our rate. I mean, that's been the case for many years, and they continue to be profligate, and we continue to be careful with money. But can I just return to the Lee Valley thing? Is because the 300,000 pounds that we pay into the Lee Valley coffers could so easily be spent in actually our own Wandle Valley, to enormous advantage to our residents. Wandle is the forgotten valley in London, it seems, and unless we get the money back from Lee Valley Authority coffers, we will not be able to do much. And I know that the boroughs of Merton and Croydon and Sutton are at one in making that request, that this money be diverted to something more useful, something more local, and something more necessary.
Councillor Leonie Cooper.
Question number 4 to the Leader.
I thank Councillor Cooper for this. I mean, this is a wonderful question in some ways, and a wonderful opportunity to say to her that, if, contrary to her feeling that nothing very much has happened since Wandsworth Challenge papers were launched, much has happened. In fact, the paper talked about change of culture, asked people to embrace the challenge of budget reductions at the same time as maintaining services. We have on this side produced nearly £67 million of savings, and are on course to achieve £80 million savings by the end of this administration. We have created the big society grant funds. We have cooperated with councils like Camden as well as Hammersmith in doing some joint procurement and joint service provision. And I have to say also, admiringly, that the challenge, Wandsworth Challenge, has been embraced by council staff. If you look at the intranet, there are regular sort of comments on there about how things could be handled differently or better. And I also note that Councillor Carpenter has embraced the challenge, because only recently he thought that this town hall could become a 5-star hotel. Now, you say, I have never been in a 5-star hotel, so I wouldn't know. But Councillor Carpenter, I'm sure, has. And I doubt his superior judgment about what makes a good 5-star hotel. But from my point of view, this is a town hall at the heart of our community, and I'd rather that our town hall was at the heart of its community rather than become a 5-star hotel. But it shows you the scale of the challenge and the scale of the embrace.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to thank the Leader for his rambling answer, which both written and verbal rehearses a rather random list of initiatives which do not constitute major organisational change. So I'd like to put to you my original question. Can you explain why there has been little done? There's been a 3-year delay, followed by major organisational change in terms of streamlining the council rather than a series of random proposals.
I mean, one of the difficulties with Councillor Cooper and a number of our colleagues is that they don't take the task in hand seriously and want to spend time talking about big initiatives and big pictures. £67 million savings is no small feat to have delivered that in just over 3 years. If you think that that is not part of the Wandsworth Challenge, I think you misread the paper. To have launched the Big Society Fund to tap into the goodwill of our community, again featured in the Wandsworth Society, in the Wandsworth Challenge, and if that is a small thing, I think you got the wrong end of the stick. We also talked about the 2 departmental mergers, with the old DTS and DOLAS did merge, and that was part of the Wandsworth Challenge workings. And of course that has informed our next iteration of what the challenge is. The challenge continues because the mess continues, and that is why the new initiative is to take it further.
Second supplementary.
Councillor McDermott.
Thank you very much. I certainly welcome the fact that we're continuing to look at how to control costs and streamline structures. Can the Leader assure us that members will be very much at the heart of this review, both with opportunities to scrutinise proposed changes and to review their own roles and responsibilities as part of the streamlining?
I welcome Councillor McDermott's question, and yes, I mean, members were at the heart of the Wandsworth Challenge. In fact, the Wandsworth Challenge was meant to all encompass everyone who had anything to do with this council, whether they were councillors, whether they were members of staff, or whether they were residents of the borough. Everyone with any ideas was welcome, and ours continued to be welcome. And of course, in the restructuring paper, which is, I suspect, what Councillor McDermott is referring to, yes, members have a role in making sure that restructuring is fit for purpose, and they have a role in examining their own role and their own involvement in making this council work in a good and a decisive way. And so, of course, yes, I would want you to play a role. I would want members to sort of shape the next chapter.
Councillor Moritz.
Question 5 to the Leader.
Thank Councillor Moritz for his question, and I think what Councillor Moritz's question shows is how hollow is their amendment of the claim that they would be looking for the low tax party status. Because what the answer shows, and the table attached shows, that if left to their own devices, they would have increased council tax by, for this year, by £238 a year per bandy pair, and give them a chance in 14-15, it could have easily gone up to 300. So that is their record of not delivering savings, not taking the tough decisions, and it speaks for itself.
Supplementary, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Morritt.
Can I thank the leader for his response? I like note what he says, no doubt by this time next year it will go up by another £100. Does he not agree with me that, in light of these figures, the case put forward by the minority party this evening is nothing short of brown-out make-believe?
Again, I entirely agree with Councillor Morritt. The party opposite has had a habit of trying whichever way they can to try and say that they are more careful with council's responsibilities. For a couple of decades, they were the high tax party. Every budget was met with proposals how tax could be increased and services extended. Then there was the fit of madness in 2002, I think, when they became a tax-cutting council and didn't tax-cutting party, and that didn't go very far. Now, in a topsy-turvy world, they say, well, putting it up didn't work, putting it down didn't work, so how about freezing it? Would that work? Well, I can tell you, it won't.
Councillor Gibbons.
Is the leader really convinced that Councillor Morritt is the right man to be counting up the money here?
At least he can count.
I am so tempted to allow a second supplemental, but Councillor Daly.
Question 6 to the leader.
Mr. Mayor, I thank Councillor Daly for his question, and the answer is fairly succinct, as it is basically that the 3.1 is not a tax increase because it is passporting of the levies, and in my reading of the rules is that we should be eligible for the freeze grant, and if it is not, there is provision in the budget.
Supplementary.
Councillor Daly.
I thank the leader for his answer. I did a little straw poll earlier and asked some people whether they thought a rise of 3.1% was the same as a freeze, and actually everybody thought it was a rise of 3.1%. So our reading of the rules is actually that you probably won't qualify for this, and we do understand the technicalities of it. Could the leader enlighten us as to whether or not he'll be gambling with any more of the taxpayers' money? There would have been a prudent way forward. You could have frozen council tax this year for much more than the £500,000 that you're going to lose when you find out that you've made a gamble with this decision.
I thank Councillor Daly for his supplementary. I think the Prime Minister described the Leader of Opposition this afternoon as the croupier and the casino. I have to say that I've never been in a casino to identify what role Councillor Daly might play in a casino. So forgive me, I can't carry on with that. It's a complete nonsense to say that, when people will get their bill, of course they will see an increase in the bill from last year, and I am not in the least saying that they will not see that increase, that they will say, my bill was this much last year, it is this much more. Of course, I'm not denying that's what they'll say. But the rules of local government finance are so complex, and they are complex, which is why we've said, well, what we are allowed to do, which is passporting the levy, which we have done, because we can't any longer, because of such a lean council that we are, carry on sort of stomaching it. We are not putting the council tax element up, and I can also say that this is not a gamble, this is a much thought through conclusion, and of course until recently I think the Labour Party was in the habit of saying put the tax up a little bit, and I think it might be that we've shot their fox and they don't know which way to turn.
Councillor Locker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would the leader agree with me that you don't need to conduct a straw poll of local residents to find out that they would regard it as rather disingenuous for a party that has voted against efficiency savings on a regular basis to claim that they could somehow freeze or reduce council tax? I
entirely agree with Councillor Locker, and it's just on straw polls reminds me of Labour Party's habit for straw polls. I think Councillor Hogg's been conducting a straw poll of some sort, or having straw experts look at the rent increases. The straw poll that actually matters will be in May 2014, and you will find out then what the residents of this borough think, as you have found out for the last 38 to 35 years. They have consistently said that this is the council, this is the side they trust with council's finances and council services. Whatever you say, you have failed to convince them that you have the mantle of being careful with money.
I regret to inform the Council that the time for questions to the Leader is now over.